Good evening, councillors. We'll start with prayers. If there's anyone who does not wish to take part, they can leave the room. I have Ian Caster here, who's subbing for Arthur, who's away. So if you would like to do the prayers, but before we do that, I'll do the normal housekeeping. Sorry? Yeah, let's say prayers first and I can sort that out. Okay. Would you like to?
Councillors, good evening. In the 15th chapter of the book of Proverbs, we find this verse. The fear of the Lord teaches wisdom, and humility comes before honour. According to the book's prologue, Proverbs was written to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the young, and to make the wise wiser. Quite a remit, I think you'll agree. What then is this fear of the Lord? Well, a more accessible way of putting that may be this. Having respect for the Lord teaches you how to live wisely. So don't be proud if you want to be honoured. This is a reoccurring theme in Proverbs, and I'm sure those of you here with something to say this evening will appreciate the value of making sure that your particular message is understood. And that may mean repeating it a few times. You see, a few chapters before our verse, we find this one in chapter 9. If you really want to become wise, you must begin by having respect for the Lord. To know the Holy One is to gain understanding. You see what I mean? The same message, but put slightly differently. So what does this mean? To know the Holy One. How can we know him? Surely he is way above our understanding. And truly he is. But to seek to know God is to understand the true meaning of Christmas. As the English poet Christina Rossetti put it, love came down at Christmas, which in turn echoes the words found in St. John's Gospel, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. The babe of Bethlehem, of whom we all sing at this time of the year, is none other than God incarnate, God himself come to us, so that we can truly know the Holy One. Therefore, the only question remaining for each one of us is, do we want to know him? Because, as this season of the year shows us, he really does want to know each one of us. And a prayer, if you'd like to join with me. Father in heaven, we give thanks for life and for the experience life brings us. We thank you for our joys, sorrows, trials, failures, and triumphs. Above all, we thank you for the hope we have in Christ, that we shall find fulfillment in him. We praise you for our country, its beauty, the riches it has for us, and the gifts it showers upon us. We thank you for your peoples, the gift of languages we speak, the variety of races we have, the cultural heritage we cherish, and the latent possibilities there are for our country to be great. Grant that we accept these gifts with thankfulness and use them for the good of the human race and to bring glory to you, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you very much. Very wise words. I'll now... yeah. Would you like to all sit down now? Thank you very much. Right, we'll start with the fire evacuation procedure. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening, so if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exits are located at the rear of the room and behind, and you would make your way down the stairs and meet in the War Memorial Park. The meetings are webcast, so members please note this meeting is being webcast and is live on the internet. And also, could you please switch your phones off or turn to silent, and if they do ring, please don't answer them while you're in the chamber. Right, thank you. If we do electronic voting, if you require a recorded named vote, you must request a recorded vote for it to be included in the minutes. And please do ensure that your voting cards are fully inserted, otherwise they don't register. So now I've got to ask, are there any apologies for this evening? Councillor Reid.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I have 3 apologies. Councillor Dan Putty, Councillor Anne Court and Councillor Hayley Eaches.
Thank you. Are there? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Gary Watts.
Right, thank you. Are there any others? Thank you very much. Right, thank you. Right, are there any declarations of interest? Yes, Councillor Cousins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Under item 9, within the confidential papers, my employer is referenced. I have sought advice and I will be staying in the room participating and voting. Thank you.
Councillor Leeks.
Madam Mayor, item 13, the tax discrepancy, discounts, etc. I will be staying in the room. I have sought legal advice. Thank you.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Under item 18, I have a declaration of interest where I shall be leaving the room.
Is that all? Right. Thank you. Then we'll go on to item 3, which is the Office of Mayor and Deputy Mayor for the next year. As in the papers, are we all agreed? Agreed. Thank you. It'd be nice if we could carry on that for the whole evening. Right, item 4, the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of October. In terms of accuracy, are we all agreed? Right, thank you. Item 5, we go on to announcements, starting with my announcements. First, I would like to welcome Councillor Kerry Crothers, and congratulations. And also we have a representative from Small Business Federation who have awarded Basingstoke a very highly commended award for being a business-friendly local authority. And I believe that Tom Con, would you like to come forward?
Thank you
If
very
you
much.
move that to the side, then we can have the press
May I
conference.
hijack your, if I might hijack that for a moment,
Certainly.
Madam Mayor.
Do you want to?
Okay, thank you. Madam Mayor, Chief Executive, Councillors, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of people start a presentation speech by saying they're delighted to be here. For reasons that will become apparent, I really am delighted to be here. For not only am I the county chairman for the Federation of Small Businesses, but I'm also the local branch chairman, which encompasses Basingstoke and Deane. So I do really have a vested interest in handing this award over. We have some 8,000 members across Hampshire, and we spend quite a lot of our time lobbying central government and local authorities over business issues relating to the small business community. Sometimes those discussions are heated, although I'm delighted to say whether we're discussing with officers or councillors here in Basingstoke and Deane, everything is handled in, I would say, a very friendly and civilised manner, for which we thank all of you. But as I say, sometimes discussions get a little bit exciting, And we felt 8 years ago we should publicly acknowledge the good work done by local authorities, particularly relating to programmes affecting small businesses. The actual programme categories vary slightly from year to year, but as far as I can recall, in the 8 years, this is the 4th time I've had the pleasure and privilege of coming to this chamber to present an award to Basingstoke and Dean. The category for which we've received the highly commended award is for the most innovative small business friendly programme, campaign or project, and it relates to a lot of the work that's been going on at the top of the town and the town centre, much of which is very, very important to the small business community. I'm afraid you didn't quite make the top step this time, but I hope I'll be invited back a year from now to make a slightly flashier award. But in any case, the competition was very fierce this year. Every local authority, bar one, in Hampshire and Dorset, entered the awards categories, and although we split them into Hampshire and Dorset separately, this is a highly sought after award, and it gives me enormous pleasure to hand this award to you, Madam Mayor.
Right.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Of course, I think we all know, and we're all very, very proud of our borough and our officers. Right, continuing with my announcements. This will be Laura Taylor's last meeting, as she has got promotion, and will be going to Winchester. So you never know, I might see her around. I have asked round because I wanted to see if people wanted to speak, and it has been indicated that several members, group leaders, and I think at least one other would like to say a few words. So, Councillor Reid, would you like to lead on that?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. This is, in many ways, paying tribute to Laura is a very easy task, but it's also a very difficult one as well because she's leaving us. It's easy because there are so many good things that we can say about Laura. She joined us, as we all know, at a very difficult time for the council, and she has very expertly steered us through the peer review, constitutional change, many elections, some of them by-elections, some of them actually planned. She's taken charge of so many major projects, and she's moved them along very skillfully and professionally, despite many potential pitfalls and challenges. And of course, it's an incredibly difficult task because we will all miss her greatly, and I will certainly miss her very personally as well. We will miss her professionalism, we will miss her expertise, we'll miss her dry humour, we'll miss her leadership and her dedication. And I will personally miss her kindness, her sound and her wise advice and guidance. So I know we'll all wish her enormous success in Winchester, in her new and very well-deserved position of Chief Executive there. Our loss is most certainly their gain. I hope they appreciate how lucky they are to have her. I know how lucky we were to have her and how sad we are to lose her now. So good luck, Laura.
Councillor Harvey, I saw you indicated.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to wish Laura every success a little bit further south, down in Winchester. I mean, it's interesting to reflect that when Laura came to the council, she was thrown right in at the deep end with the Ernst Young Governance Review, which I'm sure many of us in the chamber remember fondly for very different reasons, or not, as the case may be. But Laura was literally thrown at the deep end, so she's handled some pretty tough projects in our authority. I think it's fair to say it's all happened on your watch, Laura, in that respect. But we really do wish you well at Winchester. It's a little bit like you're going to our Everton to Liverpool, really. If we're the Liverpool, they're our Everton. So it might be nice to have a friend on the inside in that context, I think. But no, thank you so much for all your support, all your work for our residents, for us as councillors, and for this council. And it is important, I think, to say that, you know, every success going forward, it's going to be a fascinating experience with a completely different group of councillors causing you just as many mayhem and problems and headaches as we've done over the years. But I do hope we wish you every success in the future. And thank you especially for all your support. I think it's worth saying all the work you put in around the Buxton floods and the Buxton issue. You were there and it was important, and thank you for that.
Councillor Gavin James.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Saying a few words about Laura's achievements since she joined this council would have been really far too easy. So to demonstrate how much she's become a key part of the Basingstoke and Dean family, I would set the challenge to include as many family board games in my speech as possible. You arrived in this council after being given a court order over Manydown. It identified there was so much work to do it made the mind boggle. Guess who was given the task to mastermind our compliance with that order? It was you. You used the Ernst & Young report to identify that member and officer relationships were a source of frustration and a risk that could lead to our downfall. And our constitution was in a sorry state. It had so many holes in it, you could feel the drafts. You must have thought we didn't have a clue, though this didn't stop you. You were never going to settle for a trivial pursuit for improvement, and rather than scrabble around for solutions, you cut through the border dash and invited the LGA to work with us and establish that no one person or party had the monopoly on having the answers. Managing to connect 4 group leaders with officers was not an easy operation, but your drive led to that success. And after that, we gave you the football ground relocation topic as a bit of a twister. You did more than cope. You found time to answer our questions and consider our arguments. Your door was always open, and your knowledge of detail on so many topics was as incredible as your ability to articulate the council's position. It was inevitable that someone with your talents, the talents you've demonstrated since you came here, would soon move on to a more senior role, and you deserve it. If running the council was a game of snakes and ladders, you're the person that always steers us away from the snakes and towards the ladders, and for that we're grateful. Thank you.
I've been given notice that Councillor Isaac, you'd like to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to pay my tribute to Laura and express my thanks. We've worked very closely over the past 5 years on Manydown, Basingview and memorably the football club. For someone of relatively small stature, there's a lot to admire. As we know, Laura is a big personality with many strengths which have contributed greatly to the good work of this council and to the benefit of its residents. Amongst her many talents, too numerous to recount here, are an incisive, perceptive intelligence and a remarkable memory, which certainly I haven't got, for the detail of what was said and agreed and what wasn't. An ability to capture the essence of a complicated problem, distill and encapsulate it, and recommend a constructive, sound way forward. A buoyant resilience when things at the top get tough, as they frequently do here, and to come through it all with a positive outlook and way forward. A tenacity in negotiation. We often get criticised here, including from amongst our number, for the council supposedly rolling over in its discussions with the private sector. Not a bit of it. I invite you to ask some of those who have come up against Laura Taylor. I should know because I come from the wrong side of the tracks, coming from the world of capitalism and commerce. What she eats for breakfast, I don't know, but I intend to find out before she leaves.
She's leaving in 5 minutes. Okay.
Well, she isn't actually. No, she's not.
No, she isn't.
No, she isn't.
It's on the change of plan.
An ability to be diplomatic.
Thank you. I think you ought to continue very quickly.
An ability to be diplomatic, but absolutely firm with those who sadly get a bit boisterous. Lastly, a good sense of fun and perspective, which is needed in this asylum. Laura, you're a fine example to us all, and it is wonderful that you've been chosen to be Winchester's new Chief Executive. I wish you all the best in this exciting new post, which I'm sure in different ways will be as interesting and demanding stroke as exhausting as your time here at this council. We will miss you for your leadership, professionalism and your record of achievement. So thank you.
Right, and I think the last one is Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Laura, it's a big thank you from Audit and Accounts for guiding us through so many meetings with reports which weren't completely redacted. There were a few words we could debate, but it was a complex project. You got us through it, and thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'll round up with the last of my announcements. There is festive food and drinks in the parlour for after the meeting, so I would think about that when you're debating. Yes, I think Laura, you would like to speak a few words, so please go.
Gosh, members, thank you. Such kind words. It has absolutely been a privilege to serve the residents of Basingstoke, and it has truly been a privilege to work with such a group of members who are clearly passionate about delivering great services to our people. And as some of you have said, there may have been some differences of opinion, and there may have been some conversations behind closed doors that anyone would call challenging and straightforward. But from those conversations, the best outcomes flow. So thank you for giving me your trust in order that I could serve you well. So this is absolutely a great council, and I'm so proud to have been a part of it. And I wish you all well for the future. And Winchester is only 10 miles down the road, so I'm sure our paths will cross in the future. Well, not the speed I drive. So thank you. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Right, thank you. We'll now go on to item 6. Sorry? Sorry, tucked away in my notes is the Chief Executive announcements.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a short update on devolution. A devolution update item including a comprehensive suite of reports from PricewaterhouseCoopers was provided to the Community, Environment and Partnerships Committee meeting of the 30th of November. There was consensus amongst members attending that the work undertaken by PwC, commissioned by Basingstoke and Deane on behalf of 14 district and unitary authorities across Hampshire, was of high quality and provided good evidence as a basis to conduct further discussions in relation to the issues of devolution and/or local government reorganisation, as appropriate. Madam Mayor, the initial cost estimate for the comprehensive study from a leading consultancy was up to £200,000, as approved by full council. I can further advise that as a result of a collaborative approach between councils and contributions received from other councils, the amount paid by Basingstoke and Deane to date for this work stands at £40,000. As we go forwards, discussions will continue with neighbouring authorities, taking into account the guidance provided by CEP Committee, with further updates on progress to members in due course. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Now we'll go on to item 6, which is questions from members of the public. I understand we have Malcolm Fowle, who wishes to ask 6 questions.
Yep.
Just to advise you that you have 2 minutes per question.
Okay. I'm actually asking the questions firstly on behalf of Robert Price, my co-director. It relates to plot W on Basingview, and the first question I'd like to pose is, what public funding for enabling works on plot W is the council committing to in order to facilitate development for the benefit of the village hotels?
Right. I'm sorry, my batteries have just died on my Yes. All right. Well, it's just what I was going to do. Right, Councillor Isaac, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a question that relates to a confidential item, and therefore I'm not in a position to answer this. There may be an opportunity for me to do so subsequently to councillors if I get that opportunity in a confidential session, then I will do so. But I can't answer this particular question.
You are allowed a supplementary question if you have one.
I'll stand up. This is the I think, and I understand the situation. There is a substantial public subsidy going towards enabling works on the site, and I think in June of this year, an equally substantial public subsidy went towards another development site, which has been developed by Abstract Securities on Basingview, and I think in the minutes of the Cabinet, a figure of £1.5 million was actually quoted as the cost of these enabling works. Now, I'm assuming, for the benefit of all here, a similar sum is going to be allocated towards this particular site as well. In that instance, should the Council be subsidising a US capital venture fund, which is purely in this particular scheme for profit to that extent, and should they not actually be utilising that fund to actually improve public services?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I can't go into the detail of this. All I can say, though, is that there is no public subsidy that this council is providing anywhere. What we are doing is we are enabling sites, sites that need to be got ready for development in order for development to take place, and that is reflected in the terms that are being agreed and have been agreed in relation to the office development on Plot O. So what we're doing here is enabling the development of offices and hotels, which is going to be good for the borough. It's going to create jobs, and I think it's a bit rich to say that we're doing it for profit. We are doing it in the interest, very clearly, of this borough.
I didn't actually say the council was actually doing it for its profit.
I'm sorry, you've had your supplementary question.
Okay, I'm only allowed one eye. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Right, there were no other questions from the public, so we'll go on.
No.
What? Sorry, I do apologise. Could I ask you that you speak just a little bit closer to your mic, because I am deaf and I'm struggling. I'm waiting for some new hearing aids, so I'm struggling with some very tired out old ones.
The second question I'd like to pose is, has Village Hotels and its owner, KSL, which I mentioned is an American private equity firm who is developing the site for profit, given board approval to the transaction which the council or which the cabinet actually approved at their last meeting? Thank you.
Councillor Isaac.
Most hotel developers look to develop sites for profit. There's nothing remarkable about that. And in answer to the question about whether the KSL has given board approval, yes.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Can I ask whether that's actually UK board approval and also US board approval, please?
We could be here for a long time tonight. Yes, it's both.
Thank you. Then next question, question 3.
Why is the Cabinet agreeing to hotel development on Plot W when it is totally contrary to the Council's recently adopted local plan?
Councillor Isaac.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The local plan states that hotel use is considered an appropriate use at Basingview. Plot W is the only site capable of accommodating the final design required by Village Hotels. Any future planning application will be assessed in the normal way by the local planning authority. The Basingview allocation in the local plan supports regeneration of the area and includes a range of acceptable uses, including hotel uses. This policy splits Basingview into 3 sub-areas. Different uses are proposed for each sub-area. Plot W is in Area C, where hotel is not one of the preferred uses. It sits, however, adjacent to Area B, where hotels are identified as acceptable. However, I don't see this as a particular issue, bearing in mind the overall policy aspirations for a new hotel on Basingview.
Right, thank you. We go on the second section.
Supplementary.
As I understand the situation, as far as the local plan is concerned, Basingview is actually allocated into 3 zones. The preferred zone for the hotel is mid-zone. This is downtown or edge of zone, whatever the reference actually is, and it's not actually defined as the hotel site. When you look at planning and you look at allocation of hotels, you look at the sequential test, and the appropriate sites which are closer to the town centre are the ones that should actually come first in terms of priority. The second issue is when it comes to the actual scale and size of the house or the hotel, the site may well be large enough to accommodate the Village Inn Hotel, but that's on the basis that you do a lateral horizontal development. We could quite easily accommodate, and there are other sites elsewhere on Basingview that could actually accommodate a site by going vertically rather than horizontally. So it's purely and simply one of building construction cost.
Right, I'm sorry, but I didn't quite hear a question. What was the actual question, please? All right, sorry.
I was responding to Councillor Isaac's statement. That was my response.
I think I'll answer that question. I think that as a landowner, we felt that that was the best site for that hotel and, for that matter, for the Travelodge. But, of course, it will be up to the LPA to make the final decision on this.
Sorry. We're now on the next question. Would you like to put the question?
Thank you. What compensation payment will be paid to the Council's development partner, Muse, for the loss of foregone profit on Plot W? And what particular role will they be now performing in relation to that site?
Madam Mayor, I'm afraid this question goes into a confidential section, and therefore I'm not able to answer this in public.
Right, thank you. It makes it a supplementary, but do you have a supplementary?
It makes it quite impossible, actually.
All right, would you like to put your next question?
The Council are prepared to grant Village Inns an exclusivity period for there to be no other hotels within the curtilage of Basingview for a period of 5 years from the date of opening the Cabinet. From the date of opening, Cabinet sought at to actually negotiate a reduction in that period. Has that been successful, and have negotiations been concluded?
Councillor Isaac.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, from a starting point with the negotiations, Village was seeking a 10-year exclusivity period. Our officers negotiated that down to 5 years from completion of the hotel, and I'm pleased to say that there have been subsequent negotiations, and that has been reduced now so that it's 5 years from the date of agreement of the sale of the land.
Thank you, supplementary.
Sorry, I'm going back on that point. When Councillor Isaac reported that to Cabinet, it was actually 5 years at that point in time. I understood that Cabinet had referred back to him to go back and try and negotiate and reduce that period. The 10 years was initially prior to it going to Cabinet, as far as I understand.
Councillor Isaac.
Yes.
Right. Thank you. Your last question now then, please.
A number of hoteliers in the town and surrounds will be adversely affected if the transaction with Village Hotels is approved, as will the sports centre with loss of potential membership. Has the Council carried out a detailed impact assessment to ascertain whether there is sufficient latent and future demand for an additional business class hotel in the town?
Councillor Isaac, we have just over a minute left, I think.
Right. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Now changed to a 9, sorry.
No, there's been no detailed impact assessment, but Village Hotels has confidence in Basingstoke, and has satisfied itself that there is demand. That is why it is proposed to commit to it is prepared to commit to over £15 million of investment in our town. There may or may not be negative impacts on other businesses, but equally, the new investment will make our borough more attractive and generate more business and jobs, alongside the 100 jobs that Village will create.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary last question?
I do, thank you. My view remains that to subsidise a marginally viable hotel by the hotel operator's own admission is nonsensical, not sound business management, and then to impose an anti-competition clause which will restrict additional new investment and job creation in Basingview is totally inappropriate and doesn't make economic or business sense at all, especially when you have three or four hotel operators already operating.
Question, please.
It's a supplementary question.
Yes. So, sorry, what was the question? Do you agree? I haven't finished. James.
Right, Councillor Isaac.
Thank you. Again, we're not subsidising this. This is a development that we've decided is in the interests of the borough and its residents. And the exclusivity clause, as I said, has been limited and is confined to Basingview. It doesn't extend to the town centre or beyond.
Right, thank you very much. We'll now go on to petitions. I'm not aware of any petitions. Has any? No? Right, then we'll go straight on to item 8, which is resignations and appointments. And if there's any changes to committees. Councillor Reid.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. In addition to the change already on the order paper to CEP reserves, I have 2 other changes to make, if I may. First of all, to Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Ken Rattigan to replace Councillor Joe Smith. And then on EPH, Councillor Paul Gaskell to replace Councillor Joe Smith.
Right, I just need to ask advice for a minute. I was just checking that I got that right. So as we've no chair for EPH, do you have any nominations?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Tristan Robinson as chair of EPH.
Right. Do you have a seconder? Right, thank you. Can we have a vote then, please? Everyone for? Right. Are there any against them, please? Yeah. All right. I think that's pretty clear then. Congratulations. Yes, are we going to agree the changes on all the order paper? Agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Now on outside bodies. Nominations have been received as on the order paper, so don't know if there are any other, or are we all agreed? Agreed, good. Right, we now go on to item 9, and I know there's been quite a lot of talk about this. I really want to get this clear, so I'm just going to ask our Chief Executive for some advice.
Madam Mayor, agenda item 9 is potential hotel development Basing View. I have canvassed members' views on this agenda item, and based on the feedback that I have received, I am of the view that the debate will necessarily cover exempt matters. Therefore, Madam Mayor, you may wish to seek a resolution that the meeting now moves into confidential session.
Right. I think we decided in our pre-meeting that I wanted to get the Chief Executive to get the opinion. So I think we should now discuss whether we want to go into pink papers.
Just read that out.
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Clearly, if it's the view of this council, we should go into private session. I'd have to accept that. But I do think that this is a particularly poor deal for the people of Basingstoke. I think it's a shoddy deal, no value for money. I think potentially it's unlawful. And for that reason, I think our debate should be a matter for the public record. I would prefer to hold debate when we refer to white papers in public, so the public can hear our decision making and show that we've given some thought to this. Because I wouldn't like our debate and discussion to be lost. So that would be my personal request is, if you could split the debate into white paper and pink paper debate, wonderful thing, but I'd be very disappointed if the public can't see us debate what I think is a very potentially poor decision we're making.
Thank you. Right, discuss confidential papers. We need to agree with members that the meeting is now to become confidential by following this motion. That pursuant to section 100A/4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the remainder of the meeting on the grounds that public interest is maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing it, and therefore that exempt information is likely to be disclosed as defined in the appropriate paragraphs of the Schedule 12A of the Act. Do I need to read that as well?
Yeah.
Right. Right, they need to explain that in order to discuss the papers, the webcast will be turned off, but turned back on once the discussion is over. And ask members of the press and the public please to leave the room and let them know that they will be informed and can come back again once the meeting is no longer confidential.
Can we put it to the vote? So we need someone to propose the
Madam Mayor, I'll
resolution.
second that motion.
Okay.
Right. Okay, I've proposed, it's been proposed and seconded.
Can have a vote.
Right, and now can we take a vote? Is it in a point of clarity or?
Yes, it's on a point of clarity, Madam Mayor. It's just in reference to the fact that I've put forward 5 questions in relation to this agenda item, and I'm hoping that the answers to those questions will not be covered by this motion that we're voting, because I very purposefully worded it so that it referred to information that was supplied to us as members within the white papers and not the pink papers.
Right, thank you. I think time will tell on that one. And now prepared to take a vote. So those who are for going into the pink papers, could they please indicate now?
Those against?
Sorry, 31.
Yeah. Those.
Right, therefore the motion is carried.
Can you seek some further advice before doing anything?
Yes, I just think while we're on this one, we've got the same situation, I think, in item 12. So I suggest that we do the same and vote.
Yeah.
I'm surely don't need to read it all out again. So on item 12, those who would like it to go into pink papers, could they please indicate? And are there any against? Sorry, then that is carried.
So we'll now clear the chamber.
So now could we clear of any press or members of the public? Thank you very much. Which is Councillor Raffel. Would you put the recommendation, please?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to propose this recommendation for Council to adopt the Many Down Development Brief Supplementary Planning Document. This document has been consulted upon, it's been to committee. I'd like to thank all those who contributed to the consultation. I'd like to thank members who contributed to the consultation, and I would like to say that this has fulfilled one of the objectives when we were considering and structuring the local plan, that we wanted member involvement in designing and assisting in the planning of our larger sites, and a number of these development briefs are in the process of being consulted on and being prepared. So this fulfills what we set out to do when we created the local plan, and I ask members to give it their full support. I would like to say one further matter, that I am very grateful on behalf of all of you for the high quality of this document. It was praised at committee by members, and it continues the format which I think we can say that when the plan itself went to submission in front of the local plan, our team have a great strength in writing very clearly and presenting the material for others to consider. And by others, I mean those who are not in the know and outside of this chamber. So I commend them for that on your behalf. So, members, I ask that you adopt this recommendation, which is at page 100, and it's 2.1.
Thank you. And do you have a seconder? Right. I acknowledge Councillor Robinson. Would you like to speak now or reserve? Right, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a very important document. It's a milestone in the context of the development that we're looking for on Many Down, and as a result of that, the development briefs, really, as the portfolio holder has already alluded to, are important documents as we go forward. They were a part of the debate on the local plan, and while we agree and disagree quite often on quite a lot of the local plan, I think the idea of the development briefs are things that we do agree on. Within that context, I would just draw the attention of Council to page 141 and item 412 on affordable housing, and just say, in a sense, how disappointing it is that the reference to 40% affordable housing is not specifically worded as that in the document, in the paragraphs. It is interesting how on the landowning side we're quite happy to talk about the 40%, and on the LPA side we seem not to be bothered by saying it, and I do think it's important. In that context, we do say here accord with the adopted local plan, so I take it means 40%. I don't read it any other way. I just wished it had said it. But aside from that, this is a very important step forward on the whole journey we are taking on Many Down.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, I don't really want to speak on Many Down, but I want to say that the consultation for Many Down has been good, and it would be good when we have controversial things that we've just been through to have some more consultation for us backbenchers, so we can understand some of the things that are coming up, and perhaps we spend less time in this chamber arguing with each other and look solid to where we're going. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll now like to sum up.
Councillor Robinson.
I didn't think you did. Would you like to?
Madam Mayor, I have nothing to...
Thank you. Then we'll go for the vote. Are you happy that we go by show of hands? Or agreed? Are we all agreed? Is there anybody against? Right. That's agreed then. Oh, Councillor Harvey, you want to make a point?
Just as a point of record for the meeting, obviously the votes that we've taken, I noticed that there was no reference back to the recommendation coming out of confidential session. Should we have said that a decision was made and that an amendment was lost, just for the record in the context of coming out of confidential session?
Yes, I did ask. Would you like to?
Will be part of the private minutes.
Sorry, it will be in the private minutes.
Yeah.
It will be in the private minutes. now go to item 13. Right. And on this, I'd like to put the recommendation. And do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Right. Does anybody wish to debate this? Are we all in agreement then? Right. Thank you. Then we'll go on to item 14. And I'll put the recommendation on this one. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
Right, thank you. Do we wish to debate this? No. Are we all agreed? Agreed, thank you. Item 15, as in the order paper, are we agreed on this one? Agreed, thank you. Item 16, Councillor Edwards, would you like to put the recommendation?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this report concerns the appointment of a new Executive Director of Borough Development for the Council. A subcommittee of the HR Committee has been dealing with this appointment. The subcommittee was chaired by myself. The report includes details of the rigorous selection process which has been undertaken, which culminated in an assessment day on the 12th of December with 5 candidates who undertook a range of assessments during the course of the day. After considering carefully all of the feedback from various stakeholders involved in the assessment day, the subcommittee decided to invite back 3 candidates for a final assessment on the 13th of December, which involved the candidates giving a presentation on a topic previously unseen until shortly before the interview, followed by a formal interview. At the conclusion of this process, it was agreed by members of the subcommittee to recommend to Council the appointment of Tomasz Koliski as the new Executive Director of Borough Development. Tomasz is currently the Assistant Director for Physical and Cultural Regeneration at Medway Council. As you may be aware, there were 2 internal candidates, and all 3 candidates were of an extremely high quality, and the outcome was very, very close. As we progress with current projects such as Basin View, the Leisure Park and Manydown, Tomasz offers significant experience of dealing with major property and regeneration projects. Council is therefore asked to appoint Tomasz Kozliski as the Executive Director of Borough Development. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
I second that, Madam Mayor.
Would you like to speak now or reserve, or are we going to go straight to agreement?
Ask if it's all agreed.
It's a recommendation.
Are we all agreed? Yeah? Okay, brilliant. So then we go on to now to item 17, which is motions, and we've got first motion is Councillor Rattigan to propose.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The motion is as on the revised council papers. If this council is to fulfil its lofty ambitions to provide much needed housing for all its residents, we must shoulder the additional responsibility to our living environment. We must not only become beacons for the number of new homes we build, but we must also take the opportunity to enhance how we maintain our precious landscape, but most importantly our brooks, streams and rivers. We have some of the country's most important chalk streams within our boundaries, but these waterways are under constant threat from what is discharged into them both legally and illegally. Remember, their condition is a judgment upon our stewardship of those waterways. That water that passes from us to our downstream neighbours is our environmental footprint. We, as borough custodians, have a duty to leave office with this borough in a better condition than when we were elected. This is not only for our new residents, but for all who live, work and enjoy leisure amongst us. We have a local plan that supports our need to provide economic prosperity, but we must act as one entity with our planning department and the environmental agency to scrutinise and understand what is the likely impact upon our watercourses. In my own ward, the Bowhurst Brook has come under
renewed pressure, now a developer has been given permission to discharge treated sewage and hard-standing runoff into that watercourse, which is already in poor state in spite of it flowing from a triple SI, which contains many rare and endangered species of plants. The tragedy throughout this borough is that we have no current information as to the health or otherwise on the condition of our waterways. We have no knowledge of the oxygen levels or the fertiliser leakage or the hard-standing runoff affecting these environmental arteries. Therefore, we should demand that the Environmental Agency carry out stringent tests to provide baseline information on the quality of these waterways. We must insist on robust testing throughout the seasons to provide the public with the ability to form their own judgment on our stewardship. Our local plan policies EM6 and SS4 ensure that permitted discharges into these waterways should only be permitted in the most stringent of circumstances, and only when our planning department is fully involved in the process. Therefore, I call upon you all to reflect on what you wish your legacy to be: the cleanest waters in England or dead and decaying rivers. We must shape our own future, or have others less respectful of our environment shape it for us. We must ensure our waterways continue to provide the lifeblood to this green and pleasant land.
Thank you. Councillor, do you want to speak now or reserve the right to speak?
I'd like to second it, and I'd just like to say I agree completely with obviously the motion because I'm seconding it, but just to say that the inspector couldn't have been more clear on his report on the examination that we have a duty in the council to ensure that the monitoring takes place. So it's explicitly stated in the local plan, it's reaffirmed by the inspector. He acknowledged that there are severe challenges, not just for the Loddon but for the other rivers, and I think it does no harm just to remind us as a council that we have a total duty to ensure that there's not a likely deterioration, because a number of developers tried to have the word likely in SS4 removed, and he even insisted that the word likely remained. So I second the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Fell.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to begin by thanking both the proposer and seconder for this motion. I know that the Borghurst Brook is close to Councillor Rattigan's heart, and I know that Councillor Mrs Cubitt is very knowledgeable about the quality of the water on the River Loddon, and I look forward to working with them in due course. I hope that this motion will go to the EPH committee, where it can be fully aired and discussed. I welcome this as well because it is timely. There are a number of things that are currently on my to-do list, and one of those things was to wrestle with the Environment Agency and find out exactly about the quality of our water within the borough, and in particular the effect of the increased amount of housing, in particular not just to the Borghurst Brook, but there are other parts of the borough as well, but in particular the River Loddon. And so the fact that this motion has come about is timely, because I was waiting for the authority monitoring report, which is what the Environment Agency produces, to come out with the relevant figures, and at the same time for the relevant gauges to be installed. One, I understand, is just about installed, and another one's on its way in the Loddon, so that we could start to get some accurate data and monitor what the discharge level was. We are very lucky in our borough to have a number of significant waterways. It's my view, despite what others may say, that we are the source of the River Test. We have the waterways that provide the source of the River Itchen in my ward. We have the source of the River Loddon in our borough. We have the source of the River Lyde in my ward, and the Whitewater in my ward too. And that's why, of course, I should make this point. It's very bad to build above the sources of watercourses. And we have one other important waterway which hasn't received much note in recent years, but we are the source of the Basingstoke Canal. And I'm looking forward to all of these watercourses and their importance, not just in terms of water quality, but what they contribute to the natural environment and our general well-being, being reviewed when the proposed green infrastructure strategy is reviewed next year. So I welcome this motion. I ask you all to send it to EPH on its merry way, and then we can look at it in detail at our leisure.
Thank you. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Following on from Councillor Raphael, I'm happy to see this motion go to EPH. That's certainly what I would have intended to be a proposal from myself. I'm always happy to defer to Councillor Rattigan's knowledge on all matters effluent, of course. And in this respect, it's difficult, I think, probably for us to think of good reasons to oppose the motion. I don't do that, but I am concerned, particularly in regard to the second part of the motion, in terms of the resolution. The implication, at least, I think, is that our professional officers within the council, both planning and elsewhere, don't actually do what is being suggested here within this motion, and I know they do. Certainly, as a member of the DC committee, I have absolute confidence that the technical reports that we receive relating to these matters, which I'm absolutely confident the current chair of DC and those that preceded him would not allow those reports to go forward unless they were confident with the technical advice we'd received, confirming the way that sewage disposal was going to be handled from any proposed development. So I want it to go to committee. I want us to have further discussions about this, whether we are, as a council, doing what we should be doing in regard to our contact with the Environment Agency and various water authorities. I say we do. If there's some criticism of that, I want it brought out at a committee stage. I also do want to point out one other thing, really, and a number of people, particularly Councillor Rattigan, has pointed out the issues around the Borghurst Brook, and I presume he's probably referring to a development that we approved some time ago, a little time ago, sorry, for 35 units, 35 dwellings at Ashford Hill, which was fairly contentious, putting it mildly, I suppose, but it was passed by the DC because of the technical advice we had about the sewage disposal. And we were confident at the time this could be handled, and I remain confident now that untreated sewage will not be going into the Borghurst Brook. What I resent is reference to that in the context of this motion, because let me tell you very clearly, as I understand it, the developer, who I believe to be Persimmon, have argued their case based on their planning approval for the current arrangements. I think it's been suggested that if a connection to the main sewer has to be built, that would be at the cost of something like £1.5 million. And clearly, Persimmon, any developer, would be concerned at that. Their standard response, surprise, surprise, is to say that if they have to do that, they can't afford to provide the affordable housing on this development. And I object to that, and I hope the DC committee and I hope this council would object to that, not complying with a key part of our local plan in regard to the provision of affordable housing. And I don't want to see this motion used in any way as a stalking horse for something which I believe clearly could be the outcome of this, and this is the non-provision of affordable housing on that site, which no doubt would please Councillor Rattigan and no doubt would please quite a lot of his local residents, but I resist that, and I hope this council will resist that when we have a chance to discuss it within the EPH.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Gaskell, I believe this will be your maiden.
Dear Madam Mayor, it is with great pleasure that I make my maiden speech. I am Paul Gaskell. I am a chartered engineer of over 20 years and recently elected councillor for the Basing ward. It is a tall order to replace Clive Pinder, but as Clive has gone to bigger and better things, I see it as a privilege to take on the role. Let's look forward to seeing Clive on Strictly or I'm a Celebrity next year. There's an old saying, you don't miss your water till your well runs dry. For a lot of southern England, Chalk streams are our water, our wells, but they are much more than that. They are part of our landscape and our natural environment. Our history, culture, geography, leisure activities and economy, as well as our ecology. England has over 200 which make up most of the world's chalk streams. We have a great belt of them in England that run from Dorset, past London, through East Anglia and up into the Yorkshire Wolds. There are more in Normandy, but further afield, although there are great swathes of chalk elsewhere in the world, none of these areas have chalk streams. It seems that there just aren't any rivers like the English chalk streams. Our chalk streams appear to be unique. Chalk streams have been formed with geology, geography and climatic history, and human history, and this has happened almost exclusively in England. This ought to mean we should value this heritage as highly as we would any other global unique ecosystem. Chalk streams are an English Great Barrier Reef or a tropical rainforest. Sadly, we don't. Instead, these unique rivers are abused, some to the extent that they have dried up and ceased to be rivers at all. Others are rivers in so much as they have water. More than 70% of chalk streams are failing to meet the required good status, including our own Lyde and Loddon River. We simply can't afford not to look after our chalk streams. Water evaporates, rain falls, our rivers collect and return it to the sea. This is our water cycle. We use the water, we create pollution, from people, from transport, from rain, water runoff and from agriculture. Our wastewater is treated by our water authority using screening, gravitational separation and biological treatment. It is monitored by our environmental agency and it is standardised and regulated by Natural England. Our water authorities have over the years been excellent at removing biodegradable waste, but they haven't been able to remove all the phosphates. We need other forms of filtration and separation techniques for these. This is why our beloved chalk streams have been damaged. Our rivers cannot cope with the pollution levels currently experienced and additional requirements we expect to give them with the current housing and the future housing programmes. Additional housing will bring additional pollution and reduce the river's health significantly. We must ensure sustainable development design techniques to maximise effluent discharges and engineer against estimated future pollution impact. We must give clear indication that chalk stream protection and restoration is a Borough Council priority and allocate sufficient funding and resources to clean up our rivers and prevent pollution. We must work with Natural England, the Environmental Agency and our water authorities to monitor and seek ways of improving river health on a regular basis. We have sewage, we have industry, we have farming, but we also have technology and the capability to clean things up.
You have 1 more minute.
So let's get on and do it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Right, now, the last speaker that has indicated is Councillor Sherlock.
Sorry, I didn't hear. Sorry, Madam.
Do you wish to speak?
No, what I was going to say has been said. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Back to Councillor Rattigan.
All right, we can now back to you to sum up, please.
Thank you, Council. I'd like to thank the portfolio holder and I hope the Council's support for taking this to committee. It is, I feel, really important. But just to say to Councillor Potter, this isn't a stalking horse to change any DC decisions. That DC decision was made, it's a recommendation from officers. I was not on council then, so I have no view if that was right or wrong, but we have to go with what's there. My job as a ward councillor and a councillor for the whole of Basingstoke and Dean is to ensure that our waterways, whether it be in my own ward and we have the Emborn just at the edge of it, separating us from Berkshire, to make sure that these waterways are the best quality possible. I'm sure that in debate we can get to a level of understanding that makes sure that our officers do hold the Environmental Agency to account, so as we know when something is done to our waterways, we understand what's been done. If there's a problem, we can solve it, but it's the start of a conversation. I think we have a good motion here. The motion doesn't cover anything off about Bohorst Brook. It covers us as a borough, and I hope we will support it as a borough.
Right. Well, thank you very much. Then shall we take the vote? Do you need, or I think we've got consensus of opinion again. Are we all agreed? Is there anybody against? Right, then that's agreed. And we'll go on to item 18. Before we do, I'd just like to remind you that we are going at quite a reasonable pace, and the festive drinks and food is still there waiting for you. Right. So, Councillor Green, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, it's just in relation to item 18. I forgot to declare I do have an interest in this item, so I will also be leaving the room on this one.
Thank you for that. Right, then we'll go to Councillor James. Councillor Gavin James too.
Madam Mayor, given the information you've given about the wine that's out the back, and we know it's been breathing long enough, this is quite a simple situation. I think we've all got patchwork quilt pavements in our wards that are most frustrating. Unfortunately, BT's latest efforts was outside the front of my house. I've got a great video of how not to re-tarmac a hole you just made. And I know that I've got friends in Oakley who recently woke up to find that they can't get their cars off the drive because Virgin hadn't given them any notice that they were going to dig up Oakley. That's one thing. And the utility boxes, I was given to understand that green ones belong to BT and black ones belong to Virgin. Apparently that's not true. I've got one in my ward, seems to belong to no one. I'm going to have to paint it myself to get rid of the graffiti and see who gets me arrested for criminal damage to find out who owns it. Ridiculous state of affairs, but there we go. That's all we're asking the committee to look at. Unless anyone wants to argue with that, I suggest we just get on with it and send it to the right committee. I should mention there's two amendments. Number 2, unfortunately voice text isn't as good as I thought it was, or I don't speak clearly, and it should say meaning rather than being. Then it makes some sense. And also the scrutiny committee should be changed to the Community Environment and Partnerships Committee. Happy to make those amendments if everyone's in support of that. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Councillor Day, would you like to speak now or reserve?
No, I'd like to reserve my right to speak later if needs be. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Right, I've got Councillor Golding, and then it will be followed by... I saw another hand up there.
Right. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm very happy for this to come to Community Environment and Partnerships. If there is a vote, as a matter of principle, I shall be abstaining, because you don't need a motion to get something like this to committee. You just need to ask nicely. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Ruffell.
Madam Mayor, the rights and wrongs of whether or not we should be discussing this is often the case that some of us think that this isn't our business, and others say, well, if we don't discuss it here, where does it get raised? And there's a difference of opinion sometimes, and sometimes it's better we discuss things than we just ignore them, or in this case, bury them. I would say, of course, that it's the right time of the year to have well, we're in the holy season, near a holy day, and now we've got a holy motion. If it's going to go, where's it going to go, Madam Mayor? Where are they thinking of sending this? Is it scrutiny? It's community somewhere, anyway. Right. Well, I thought it was going to scrutiny because but no, I haven't been listening. But as it's not. The important things with a motion which we perhaps could discuss anything on, because it's not really to do with the business of this council, is perhaps I could ask Madam Mayor a particular question of you, if it's appropriate, is perhaps we ought to discuss why it's getting harder to buy advent calendars these days, because I have been told that the answer is because their days are numbered. I just wondered whether that was a relevant thing. I have been looking up to see. I know they want to go to the pub, but it's very important. I have tried to find out, because members are always saying things are very important and things concern them. This concerns me. I've tried to look up some political jokes. I couldn't find one about the Liberal Democrat leader. You can make of that as you will. I'm not sure it's because nobody knows who he is and therefore they haven't found a joke about him yet. I found one about David Cameron, which some of you have heard, although he's not the Conservative leader at the moment. And it says
you said a word there. Is this really relevant?
Well, I think you should. I think the members opposite might want to hear this one, but only if they hear the next one. And then I'll sit down. Madam Mayor, the question was, what was David Cameron's favourite Christmas tune? And it's "All I Want for Christmas is EU." And the final one is this: why are Jeremy Corbyn's Christmas cards on the floor? It's because his cabinet has collapsed. That's it, Madam Mayor.
With that, yes, please be seated. Thank you. Just remind me not to buy any crackers where you've bought them. Right, Councillor Day, would you like to sum up? Sorry. You don't wish to speak? Councillor James, you want to come back? No?
Put it to the vote.
Sorry? Right, Councillor McCormick. I hope it's no more bad jokes.
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. No, I think I can't really follow up on those jokes. It was just a couple of comments for information, really. My understanding was if you have a highway and a poor job is done by a utility company of maintaining it, the Highways Authority, Hampshire County Council, can compel the utility company to make good those repairs at their own expense. That was my distinct understanding. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. And I would be very happy for this to go before CEP committee, because I think that gives us an opportunity to explore better ways of joined up workings with various utility companies and maybe get some kind of common computer infrastructure so we don't have to rely on them answering emails. Thank you.
I think that will probably come up at the committee. So, oh, you're going to sum up now, okay. No more bad jokes, though, please.
Only to reassure the council over there that one of the problems we have is that the county council don't have enough officers to check on utility works, which is why, unfortunately, they've disappeared before we find out they've left a mess, and then county don't pursue it. I'd love them to do so. That's part of the reason to go into committee, to find out what the county procedures are and how they can be improved. That's all.
I'll declare I'm a county councillor, so I'll step back from that one. I have my own opinions. All right. Then we'll go to the vote that it goes to CEP. All agreed? Right, thank you. Then we'll go to the next one, which is notice of motion. I think that's Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And talking of county cuts, to pick up directly from the previous speaker, County Council had a cabinet meeting recently. They had a report. And in that report, they were congratulating themselves on, quote, saving nearly £300 million. Saving, I'll come back to that in a moment. That County Council decision congratulating themselves, saying how wonderful they were doing, is actually disgraceful when you consider the things that our communities and our residents are facing from the cuts and from what the County Council is actually doing. And Deloitte, as part of that process, are being congratulated for achieving over nearly £100 million of those cuts to the County Council's budget. That's at a cost of nearly £1 million a month in consultancy fees for them to go about the business of finding cuts that are impacting on our community. Doesn't square, it doesn't sit right, it doesn't feel right at all that that is the way that business is being conducted at the County Council. It does reflect upon us and it does impact upon us. It was interesting recently talking about management consultants in that context, specifically employed by local authorities, because management consultant whistleblower recently interviewed by the BBC in a documentary said that it is well known within the industry that it's very easy to sell their services to the public sector because the clients were inexperienced, inconsistent and incompetent. Very apt way of describing the leadership of Hampshire County Council, I think, at the moment. And one nasty trick, I think, one particularly nasty trick that the management consultants try to play is that instead of accepting a fee up front, the consultancy firms sometimes take a percentage on any savings that they can find. Just think that through for a moment. The more cuts that are made, the more money they make. They know the risk, and they are rewarded in the contract for doing so. Several councils have entered into this risk and reward contracts and reportedly netting over 16% in profits to these sorts of management consultants doing this kind of work. So is it morally right that the management consultants are making a profit from the cuts that we are seeing to the public services that our residents see and face? Is profiteering from austerity really what we are about in Hampshire? And it does affect us, and it is relevant to us as an authority, because it is our residents that face the cuts. When we talk about losing 163 adult social care workers, when we talk about 80% cuts to youth services, when we talk about school budgets being cut by 12.5%, or children's centres being closed, or threats to dim the street lights, or £21 million being cut from children's services, this is actually what we're talking about, and then what we have to grapple with. And we've done well in this authority by dealing with a lot of the issues that are thrown at us. If I talk about the highways issues for a second, just as a very small example of what we've had to deal with, it's we who have picked up the pieces, but are then having to translate those cuts into our own budget in the following year. That isn't good enough, that the county passes on the cuts to us, we try to pick up the issues, and then we're faced with having to make austerity cuts to our budget because of the issues that we face in this authority. I really do believe that this area of policy, this direction of travel, this way of going about business is worthy of scrutiny. It is right that we call in the County Council, that we ask them the questions we have on this, that we examine these issues in some detail on behalf of our residents in Basingstoke and Deane, because we do not get that level of scrutiny at Winchester. Very, very clearly, you see how they operate their cabinet, you see how they ask questions. It's not easy to go about the process down in Winchester, but it is appropriate to bring it here so that we address our residents' concerns in our scrutiny committee about the direct issues they are facing day in, day out by services that are being cut. And I just do think, I mean, we had the hospital in, didn't we, in scrutiny recently? You know, the issue of bed blocking. It's a pretty serious issue. It's not the hospital's fault. It's the fact that the county council aren't providing the care packages in social care for those residents to come out of hospital into secure environments with secure packages of care in order that they can be sustained in independent living or whatever environment is appropriate to them. They're in hospital because the county council aren't picking up the issues, yet they're paying Deloitte over £1 million a month to find over £100 million in cuts. I mean, come on, are we really, really willing to accept that? I think it is right we scrutinise it, it is right we examine this, and that the County Council justify themselves to our residents, and that is all we are asking for in this motion, is that we again, as we always do, stand up for Basingstoke and Deane.
Right, thank you. Councillor Westbrook, do you wish to speak now?
Madam Mayor. What can you say about management consultants? It's often said that they'll borrow your watch to tell you the time and then they walk off with your watch. Now that is a joke if it wasn't so serious. We have to acknowledge that under certain circumstances there will be the need to use the services of a consultant, but we also have to acknowledge that there are consultants out there making a tidy profit out of local government cuts. There was even a documentary made about it. Now we don't know the detail of contracts awarded to external management consultants by Hampshire County Council. They could well be incentive based. The more money they save, the more they're rewarded. Under that scenario, the more austerity there is, the more profit there would be for the consultant. And unfortunately, the more people would suffer. Are Hampshire County Council saying they no longer have the expertise and they have to buy it in? Last year they were slammed in the press with the headline, Hampshire Civic Chiefs spending millions on consultants whilst cutting crucial services. It went on to say Hampshire County Council is spending millions on management consultants while making savage cuts to frontline services for vulnerable people. Critics pointed out that if less public money was spent buying this external advice, cuts to social services might not be necessary. Then, despite defending the amount being spent on external advisors, saying it was more efficient and cost effective than recruiting permanent staff, a few months later they decided to create their own internal consultancy team to work alongside Deloitte. Why do we need both types of consultant? If Hampshire County Council is employing its own internal management consultants, why pay for Deloitte? This money, in my opinion, would be better spent on frontline services for Basingstoke residents. We're encouraged to believe by Hampshire County Council that external consultants are private sector partners used to support transformational change. Why transformational change? Transformation equals starting again. Transformation inevitably means spending more money, and it changes everything. You never need to change everything. However, you do need to improve those things that need to be improved, and at the same time guard and protect the things that are okay and work well. As our residents pay over more than 3/4 of their council tax to Hampshire County Council, surely we are obligated to consider whether it's being well spent. Who recommended overall which services would be severely cut or axed? Who recommended and calculated the amount of time spent on carers' visits and changes to staffing in care homes? Who recommended which vulnerable people no longer needed support? And who recommended that shutting 43 of the 54 children's centres would be acceptable, despite the opinion of over 10,000 Hampshire residents who signed up to disagree? Did Hampshire need to buy in these decisions because of their lack of expertise, or are they using consultants as a mask to cover up their political choices they're making? Just 1 month of management consultancy fees would have kept open all of Basingstoke children's centres for a whole year. Our motion clearly states that in the interest of fairness, we would like to hear the relevant county cabinet member come and answer some of these questions and explain why creating a consultancy dependency culture is so necessary. Please support our motion.
Thank you, Councillor Westbrook. Councillor Tate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I read the motion, my heart sort of dropped, to be honest, because looking at it, this evening we've spent a good amount of time dealing with issues which are important to Basingstoke and Deane, which are issues that we can control, that we can deliver results on, and that we can provide outcomes with. First point with this motion to me is Hampshire County Council, and I'm not an apologist for Hampshire County Council. I have my own views, but at the end of the day, they have their methods of scrutiny, they have their cabinet, and that's where they make decisions, and that's where they can be evaluated. It's nice to think that we can have some input. Yeah, fine, but when I look at the motion, it says a number of things to me, which says we have a sort of inbuilt right to jump across the system. What's been done to try and discuss this direct with Hampshire? I've no idea. That needs to be something that perhaps would be thought of before bringing a motion to Council and spending a significant amount of the working time doing something which actually will get us no outcome in due course. The second point regarding this motion, which again saddened me, is the use of language within it. Because it implies already there's an answer which you're looking for, which is everything is wrong, there's a dependency culture, and that management consultancy is something to be feared or is something that is completely negative. Having worked quite a lot with management consultancy, that's not the case. It's very easy to say, oh, somebody outside gave you a decision which you either didn't like or you knew already. And fundamentally, good consultancy will give you good outcomes which will develop the chain of decision making, will give you the opportunity to save money, give you new ideas which are outside of your normal day-to-day existence. So when you look at the language which already says it's all wrong, you know, how is that to be taken as being a neutral, tell us something that we might know? It says, come to us and we're going to berate you. And that's why I'm disappointed in a motion like this, because it deals with things which we can't deal with, which don't get us any further forward, and fundamentally just provide a platform for a load of statements which may or may not be true.
Right. Thank you. Now, Councillor Keating.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm concerned about the cuts that come from the County Council because it directly affects us, all of us, our relatives, friends who are elderly. Can I just take a moment to reflect on where we've been and where we're going? Nationally, the government of Britain, irrespective of colour, had a well-established arrangement of giving grants to local authorities to carry out the functions that the government required them to do. the government requires them to do. Recently, we've had that overturned. We've been told that in setting our rates, we have to accept without challenge that the government will stop giving us grant, local government grant, in Basingstoke and Deane, and by 2020 they'll be asking us to pay them instead of giving us a grant. In the meantime, we have the financial arrangements which are being imposed upon local government. Now, it doesn't matter to county council because they just passport the cuts along. They don't do anything about them, they just pass them along, right? So instead of having national taxation and giving local government grants, we used to have national taxation and the government took care of the cost of social care. Now, I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying it's right, but the local government got the money from the centre. The county council got the money from the centre, and they still get some. They still get some. But now what's being proposed by the government is that they will have a national taxation system and they will collect the money. But they won't spend it on social care as they used to. The county council will get less than they ought to, and they'll passport the cuts onto the boroughs. Now, the local tax here in Basingstoke and Deane consists currently of taxation generally applied and we agreed in the budget every year. Most of the documents are public now in terms of the local taxation stuff. And the people in the rural areas, they have parish councils, so they have an additional payment to call the precept. Now the government, the national government, has decided, without you and I being consulted or anyone else, that they will add to local tax plus a precept for parishes. We will now have to pay a 3% additional precept to pay for social care, and that is not enough to pay for social care because they're cutting the finances to the county council as well. So we're in a hell of a pickle. We've been spending, with your direction, I hasten to add, oh, we won't put the council tax up. Now we don't decide anymore if we put the council tax up. The government does. So we're in a pickle. The county council just passports on the cuts, and the government says, we'll decide that you will have an additional precept. It's a nightmare. And I tell you who it's a nightmare for. The people who will be required by law.
You have about 50 seconds left.
Thank you. Who will be required by law to pay these additional payments, precept after precept. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Paul, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's interesting, isn't it, to hear the debate this evening and think about why are we here? You know, we're here for our residents, and we're here for the issues that matter to them, and we're here to discuss how we go about our business as a council, looking after their interests. The scrutiny training, interestingly, this year encouraged members to look abroad to those organisations who have direct influence and direct impact on our residents. We were encouraged to scrutinise things like the NHS trusts, things like the county council, and so on. That was part of the suggested direction of travel from a learned, experienced Conservative councillor in another part of the country who had undertaken significant social services inquiries for his district, for his borough. And I think that was a lesson well given and something that I think scrutiny took on board. So in asking this, and requiring us, in a sense, to do what's best for our residents by asking the county council to come and justify itself, it matters. And what are we really saying? I mean, why am I asking you to vote for this, to send this to scrutiny? I'm asking you because the amount of time given over to feeding somebody in social care has been cut so severely to 15 minutes. Think about that. 15 minutes to go into somebody's home, to feed them, to look after them, to make sure they are okay before you leave as a carer. That is a direct result of the cuts of the county council. What are we talking about? Somebody waiting all the time they wait to be changed as an older person? The dignity issues involved in all of this because of the cuts of social services that have been influenced by the county council. The cuts that Deloitte were tasked with going to find. And my colleague is right. £1 million a month would keep our children's centres open. Let's think about the issues involved in a sense, where we're going with this as council. So it's quite interesting. Sajid David's now coming out and he's interested talking about unitary authorities. The language is changing, the direction of travel is changing within government on this. It is right that as a second-tier authority, we bring Hampshire County Council to Basingstoke and Deane and we scrutinise them for our residents, for the services that we care about and we believe are incredibly important. We know about the consultation when it comes to county. How many times have we responded to consultation at county only to be ignored, only for it to be completely and utterly forgotten about when the original decision that they always intended to take is simply rubber stamped by the Cabinet? That isn't real engagement. We know that. We've come up against that ourselves time and time again with the issues we want to deal with as a council here. And it's also fair to say as well, and this is important, the cuts to come are serious. We think it's been bad now. We think it's been bad to date. With the sort of things that the County Council are now being asked to cut, what are Deloitte going to be asked to go and find now in the future, let alone what they've found existingly at the moment? Those cuts are going to strip our local council services bare. They really are. And they already do impact. Look at the buses. And I mean, you could pick issue after issue after issue that's relevant to our residents. So let's do the right thing. Please support the motion. Let's send it to scrutiny and let us do the piece of work, a sensible and important piece of work that means we do stand up for our residents when it comes to the services they expect from our second-tier county council.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. We're going to put it to the vote now, unless you're all in agreement. No? Okay, we'll put it to, you want a recorded vote? Sorry, I meant to say it is open. Yeah. Obviously the vote is for the motion or against. We've still got a couple of people to vote.
Everyone's voted.
Sorry, I've just changed mine to 4.
Everyone voted?
Okay.
Okay, you're going to close the vote?
All right, that's the vote concluded. Close the vote. Yet the motion is carried and will be referred to scrutiny. Now we go to item 20, which is motion by Councillor McCormick and Councillor Cousins on modern slavery. Councillor McCormick. Sorry,
Right.
I'd like to start again.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Modern slavery is a growing problem in Britain, affecting men, women and children. It is by its nature a hidden problem. We're often dealing with trafficked people held against their will and kept isolated from the outside world. While the numbers reported are rising, these are just the victims we know about. The actual numbers are likely to be far higher. It's happening around us. We need to be aware of the problem. There are a number of cases and modes of operation of modern slavery that we do know about in agriculture, food processing, textiles, car washes, cannabis farms, restaurants, takeaways, nail salons. Often these people are British born as well as people trafficked into the country. Modern slavery can take many forms: debt bondage, forced labour, criminal exploitation, sexual exploitation, domestic servitude. There is no one face of modern slavery, and due to its hidden nature, not being aware of cases in this borough does not mean it is not there beneath the surface. We need to be better at spotting the signs of this hidden problem, people who are displaying symptoms of physical or psychological abuse, isolation, malnutrition, living in dirty, cramped or overcrowded accommodation. We've probably all heard of cases outside of this borough of people being forced to live in sheds, for instance. That's a classic indication. So what I'm proposing is that as a council, we need to work with our agencies, because it's not an issue we can tackle alone. We need to be working in partnership with agencies, which is why I'm asking we join the Hampshire and Isle of Wight partnership to jointly tackle this problem, and I'm more than happy for this to be referred to a committee such as CEP if we need to warrant further discussion. And I think it's really important that every partner, every member of staff and council members are fully aware of modern slavery and what we can do to stop it. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Councillor Cousins, would you like to speak now?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, modern slavery should be a 21st century oxymoron. It debases our community, our common humanity. It distorts industry and markets. It tears at our communities, and it fuels violence and organised crime. The Salvation Army estimates 13,000 people in the UK live in slave-like conditions, and that 1 in 4 victims of modern slavery are children. I hope we can all agree that this evil has no place here in Basingstoke-on-Dean. Modern slavery has been around for years, but it is only now just finding itself in the lexicon of our society. And this is due to the great work of many charities, but also through the passing of the Modern Slavery Act of 2015. Before the Act was passed, it was clear that the practice was in place, but authorities didn't know how to proceed. 3 years ago, the Centre for Social Justice asked police chiefs how they were tackling model slavery. One police chief told of one such case. A young woman had run away from a brothel to the nearest police station. She had told them that she had been trafficked into the UK and that she had no passport. The final decision that constabulary made, Madam Mayor, is quite shocking. They said, and I quote, "Under the confusing circumstances, we chose to arrest her for being an illegal immigrant." Fortunately, we have now moved on from this, and police forces have proper laws and guidance that dictates what they should do in such circumstances. And we should remember that modern slavery does not just mean EU and non-EU citizens being trafficked. UK residents, especially the homeless and vulnerable, are at risk of being enslaved and abused. Our motion puts forward some simple and sensible suggestions that our council can take to ensure that we are doing our bit to tackle and eradicate this horrible scourge on our society. One section I want to focus on briefly is on supply chains. Within the Act, businesses with a turnover of over £36 million must produce an annual statement declaring what they have done to ensure slavery isn't present in their business and in supply chains. I believe it is only right that as we handle money from the taxpayer, we should prevent slavery from our own supply chains. I hope that there is cross-party support for this motion, but if there is anyone here who feels this isn't a major concern to them, or believes that this is too big an issue for our council, I will finish with a quote from the great 18th century anti-slavery MP and campaigner, William Wilberforce. "Having heard all of this, you may choose to look the other way, but you can never say you did not know." Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Right, Councillor Simon Bound.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is indeed a hidden crime. It is impossible to know the true scale of modern slavery in the United Kingdom and indeed the rest of the world. It is a hidden crime and many victims suffer in silence. We also know that in 2/3 of cases the victims are women, often abused physically and sexually in the course of their enslavement. This is simply unacceptable in modern day Britain. That is why I'm pleased that a Conservative Home Secretary introduced the Modern Slavery Bill in 2015 to strengthen our response and reduce the number of victims of this abhorrent crime. This motion allows me to underline what we have already done in relation to the Modern Slavery Act 2015. Modern slavery is recognised as a form of abuse and included within the corporate safeguarding policy and procedures. The safeguarding training specifically refers to the signs of modern slavery. Anyone with concerns would be required to refer the matter through the Council's safeguarding referral process. Further safeguarding training sessions are due to be programmed in 2017, and I would encourage all members of staff and members of the Council to attend them. The Council's procurement process has already been revised to include the mechanism for prompting officer consideration of modern slavery and to comply with the transparency and supply chain provisions. The Council, as an employer, carries out checks on every employee, temporary and permanent, to ensure that they are eligible to work in the United Kingdom. We also ensure that any agencies we work with for the supply of temporary staff do the same. The Hampshire and Isle of Wight Modern Slavery Partnership is police-led, multi-agency initiative. A Basingstoke police inspector attends the forum and shares information as relevant with council community safety staff and at the Basingstoke Vulnerabilities Operational Group, where any issues of local concern would be raised and considered by multiple agencies. Modern slavery has not been identified as a matter of concern in the Crime and Disorder Strategic Assessment for the Safer North Hampshire area, which would require priority action from the Community Safety Partnership at this time. But we must remain vigilant. The Council's website is being refreshed to bring together and enhance the safeguarding information available in the public domain, which will satisfy the requirement for a statement setting out the steps that the Council has taken during the financial year to ensure that modern slavery is not taking place in any part of its own business or indeed our supply chain. There will be regular reviews on how the Council and its partners are responding to the challenges presented by modern slavery, and procedures in the safeguarding policy will be refined as necessary. Madam Mayor, I support this motion as an endorsement of all the work that we have already undertaken and will continue to do.
Thank you very much. Now, Councillor Hannah Golding.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to wholeheartedly support this motion, and in doing so I would also like to, as Councillor Bound has, acknowledge the good work that Basingstoke and Deane Borough Council already does in this area. I am pleased to hear that we have strong links with the police and that they represent us at the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Modern Slavery Partnership. I am also aware that we have lots of local groups in our area, such as churches and charity focus groups, that are also working with the police to identify and eradicate slavery in our area. However, I would not want to see this council become complacent about this issue, or believe the stereotype that modern-day slavery is just about the sex trade, or that it doesn't happen in our area. As an example, I would like to share with you an update from the charity Hope for Justice that I received just this week. It contains the story of Lottie. She came to England with the promise of work 3 years ago, but instead of work and freedom, she got slavery. She was forced to work 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, and was barely given enough food to live on. And in addition to all of that, she was raped and gave birth to a son, a child who was born into slavery in our own country. Now, Lottie was one of 134 people rescued by Hope for Justice this year, and she and her son now have their freedom. Now, the point of me sharing this experience, and I apologise for being emotional, is genuinely not to make this meeting longer. It is long enough already, but it was instead to show how different slavery can look. Lottie wasn't living in a brothel. She wasn't part of the sex trafficking trade. To the casual outside observer, she would have looked like a wife, or a sister, or a daughter. But she was, in fact, a slave. Now, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight recognise that slavery is an issue that they have to tackle. And while they may need to be the leading authority in this area, we as a council must recognise that slavery is an issue and that it is happening in Basingstoke-and-Deane. Because, Madam Mayor, while the risk of modern slavery may be low in our borough, a low risk is still too high a risk. And while there may not be high numbers of slaves in Basingstoke-and-Deane, any is still too many. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. That was very, very emotional, but very, very brave. And thank you very much. It brings it home to us all. Councillor McCormick, do you want to sum up?
Well, I think we're all in agreement, and it is a very grim subject. But I'm really hopeful now that we will put our name to the partnership alongside Rushmore Council and do our part and show the world that modern slavery is an evil that has to stop, and we will do our utmost to stop it. Thank you, everybody.
Right, thank you. I'm absolutely sure that that will be agreed, that will go to CP. We all agreed? Thank you. Then we move to item 21, which is to receive the minutes of the meeting that's on the papers. Are they noted? Right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is in relation to page 7714, minute number 20/16, the performance panel update, and is a question to the chair of the performance panel. My question is in relation to the adoption of the housing and homeless strategy at the last meeting of full council. Would the chair allow the performance panel to examine which key performance indicators from the previous housing strategy have not been carried over into the new housing strategy, and what is the impact of those that have been removed? Thank you.
Yeah.
Nigel Pearce, I think.
So, sorry, I just want the chair of scrutiny's. Nigel, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't keep you very long, only about 23 minutes I think I've got. No, that's fine. Love to take it.
Thank you. I note we're getting very quickly towards 9:30. Do you want to move standing order as well?
Can you agree that the minutes are noted?
I've agreed that the minutes are noted first. Agreed. Yeah. Right, then we're getting quite close to 9:30, and I don't want to stop somebody halfway through just to say. So I'll be agreed that we continue for at least another half hour, at least.
Well, you have to get the views of the meeting.
Right.
So,
right.
so
Sorry.
people,
Are we
people
agreed?
To adjourn or not?
Yeah, they're agreed. Right. Sorry, the chief executive is not sure clear what I'm asking. So what I'm actually asking is that we continue the meeting, and we can review it in half an hour. Yeah. Right, we go now to question item 22, which is questions from members of the council, and that's Councillor Tilbury. Sorry, to the leader of the council.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. The question is as on the order paper.
Would you like to come back, leader?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I first of all say that it's a pity that any public money has to be spent dealing with complaints against councillors, because it should be a reasonable expectation that councillors, whether they're county councillors, borough councillors, parish councillors, should always seek to act in accordance with legal requirements, codes of conduct, protocol, or actually in simple terms, with common decency in their relationships with one another. I have never understood the argument, well, that's politics, and that anyone should need to be belittled, that honest views held should be disparaged, or personal insults traded just in the name of seeking political advantage. That said, we do have to recognise that justice should not be just done, but it needs to be manifestly seen to be done, and that inevitably sometimes complaints will arise that need to be investigated in the interests of maintaining openness and transparency. The moment that you create such a system to handle complaints, you will inevitably incur costs and invite potential abuses of the process. I'm pleased to say that as a borough of our size, we have relatively few complaints, which average around about 5 per year, with the exception of 2015, when the number shot up to 19. Now, I would argue that even 5 is too many. However, of the 19, in 2015, 16 related to 2 parish councils, which I will not name, and in total only 4 complaints were found to have concluded a breach had been committed. Now, it is the monitoring officer's responsibility to administer these complaints, but given their low number, the work is only a small part of their overall responsibility, and therefore we have not in the past recorded specific hours against each case, and it is not possible to quantify the costs on an accurate and meaningful basis. But we are currently considering the introduction of a time recording system for legal matters, and therefore may be able to do so in the future. However, there would of course be a cost associated with the introduction of such a system. On Councillor Tilbury's second point, the cost of obtaining external legal advice was £1,200 for dealing with an appeal request relating to a complaint with which Councillor Tilbury is familiar. Finally, Councillor Tilbury requests the cost of employing temporary legal governance support to cover our lack of in-house capacity. Well, it should be noted, of course, that our legal establishment is, in normal circumstances, more than adequate to meet our requirements without the need for additional support. However, from August 2015, the Shared Legal Services Manager and Deputy Monitoring Officer, who for the avoidance of doubt are one and the same person, was on maternity leave, and at the same time the Head of Law and Governance has been absent on sick leave. In the year from August 2015, a total of £53,700 has been spent on 2 locum appointments to deal with complaints-related matters in the absence of our full-time employees. I trust this gives the information requested as far as it is possible to do so. But I would reiterate that the best way to reduce the cost of dealing with complaints against councillors is to ensure that all of us takes our individual responsibility to act in a proper manner, showing respect to all others at all times, as befits anyone holding public office. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Hello, I just need to check with the thing. Is that? All right, we've got supplementary. Okay, I just thought that might have been okay. Would you like a supplementary? Councillor Tilbury.
No answer to the question.
Okay, fine.
Thank you. For a change, I was right. Okay, we now go to question 2, which is from Councillor Cubitt.
Thank you. I know you all want to go and have your drink, but I'm not going to be as kind as Councillor Tilbury. I'm going to read the questions out. I'm obviously being extremely stupid, but I'm having great difficulty understanding the role of Muse Developments in relation to the preferred option 2.2, page 34, for the potential hotel development, Basingview and the Math. Whilst I agree it seems that the preferred option will be excellent for Basingview, I fail to understand why we are having to pay Muse Developments so much money in relation to this preferred option and thus incurring costs to this council instead of generating capital receipts. It doesn't make any sense. Please can the Cabinet Member for Property and Development explain why, despite the fact it is Muse Developments that has identified that it is essential for Basingview to have a business class hotel, and that it was Muse Developments who appointed Christie & Co to secure a suitable business class hotel operator, that the resulting preferred option, 2.1 page 34, Village Urban Resort transaction is outside the development agreement for Basingview and is not therefore covered by payment provisions or formulas included in the development agreement. How can this be?
Councillor, is it Isaac? Can I just say, if you can make the answers fairly brief, otherwise most of the time is taken on the answers and the members don't get a chance if they want to do supplementary.
Well, I've got to give a full answer, Madam Mayor. I have offered to speak to Councillor Cubitt on these issues, and it seems to me that tonight has demonstrated there's a great deal of difficulty of understanding. And during the break, Councillor Tony Jones suggested to me that it might be a good idea if we had a session for councillors to explain what is being done at Basingview, and I think that's a very good idea, Councillor Jones, and so I would be recommending that to officers, that we have a briefing on this, because I think that officers are doing a fantastic job in very difficult circumstances at Basingview, and in particular I'd like to endorse the efforts of the project director at Basingview, who is doing a tremendous job, and contrary, and this is rather irritating, contrary to what Councillor Cubitt thinks, is an employee of Basingstoke and Dean and not a consultant. She's not a member of the LEP, I'm told, as well, so another inaccuracy. But anyway, moving on to answer the question. This council wants and has decided to see a business class hotel on Basingview to meet the aspirations articulated by businesses on Basingview. I was at a Basingview Occupiers Forum meeting this morning. I did a straw poll and all of them were very enthusiastic about having a business class hotel on Basingview. Under the development agreement, Muse is responsible for making the appointment of consultants. The development agreement enables Muse to draw down sites on leases for terms of up to 250 years to secure forward funding or forward commitment to purchase agreements. It's not Muse's idea that we should have a business class hotel on Basingview. It's very much a case of what we have decided as an administration and recommended to this council. In this particular instance, Village Hotels is effectively an owner-occupier that does its own development, so doesn't need the project management services of Muse or funding. Under the development agreement, Muse has registered its interests in the title of all the development sites, so the council needs its cooperation in releasing sites that are not developed in accordance with the mechanism envisaged under the development agreement. There is no plan to pay Muse lots and lots of money, but we are offering to pay them money that they've already expended, they've already incurred on things such as marketing, transport studies, master planning, etc. over the years from 2012 in accordance with the development agreement.
Right, thank you. Do you want to come back? You got a supplementary?
Yes, I mean, firstly, I have got a question, because you specifically said it's not part of their vision, but it's stated in the executive summary that was an essential part of their regeneration vision. So I don't understand your dispute on that, and I'd like to have an answer to that. And secondly, if she is an employee, I mean, just as this isn't semantics, on her LinkedIn, she's not recording herself as an employee of the council, and she states she's a board member of Enterprise M3. So that's my source of information. Usually LinkedIn is accurate.
Thank you. 30 seconds to answer.
I'm not sure that if I were looking at this, that I would rely on LinkedIn. But anyway, we all have different approaches to these things. What we have is a shared vision with Muse. They understood, they supported our view that a business class hotel was the best option in terms of regenerating Basingview, giving the amenities that the occupiers on Basing View wanted, and to provide the jobs, and good jobs. And I think
sorry,
it was
your time's out. Right, we'll go to the next question then, please.
Yeah, thank you. Please could the Cabinet Member explain what controls are in place with regards to keeping the enabling costs for preferred option 2.1, page 34, at a minimum and at the very least in line with the projections? And in the event that the enabling costs go over the budget, who will be responsible for them?
An external independent project manager will be appointed to deliver the enabling works on behalf of the Council. The works will be tendered or delivered under the SCAPE framework. The Council will be responsible for meeting any cost overruns.
Thank you. Please could the Cabinet Member advise why this transaction should at this pivotal moment be awarded delegated authority as per 2.2 page 35? Who will be responsible for further hitherto unknown costs incurred with regards to Muse development, and specifically I'm worried about section 12.3 page 45. Yeah, thanks.
Let me reassure Councillor Cubitt that the Council is responsible, but it's normal process, normal procedure. It's made the decision to dispose of the site and is asking Council to release the capital budget. Delegation is to the Executive Directors for Borough Development, Finance and Resources and Head of Law, and myself as portfolio holder, and that's to implement the details of the decision made by Cabinet. As far as Muse are concerned, their cooperation as our development partner is required to release the site from the development agreement in order to effect the disposal to Village Hotels.
Thank you. Your next question, or?
Just as a supplementary with regards to that, on 12.3, who therefore is responsible in the event that you don't secure the projected costs that you've got for that agreement?
Well, firstly, I would expect there would be a contingency in the budget, and if that contingency was exceeded, then I'm sure we as delegated responsible officers and portfolio holder would refer the matter back to the Cabinet.
Right, this is moving so fast, I believe we're now on question 5. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would like the Cabinet Member to explain why we persist in Basingstoke and Dean in retaining freeholds when selling sites. I understand it reduces significantly the value of our sites and reduces the number of potential bidders. I note that the recent beauty parade only attracted 2 interested parties on leasehold terms. How many interested parties were there for the same marketing campaign for an outright sale of the same site, and at what price differences?
Madam Mayor, it is right that the Council retains the freehold when selling sites. This enables us to have control of future use of the land and also to secure contributions to estate charges. I think there's some fundamental confusion here. In the past, we have retained freeholds and granted long leases where significant ground rents were payable. As buildings got older, the long leaseholders have been disincentivised to spend money on modernising the buildings because of the high ground rents. This does not apply here, or for that matter, with John Lewis and Waitrose. The Council retains the freehold, but grants a 250-year lease for a capital sum, but receives no ground rent. It is therefore, in effect, a sale of the site.
Sorry, just as a supplementary, I'm afraid I don't think the Cabinet Member answered my questions, because the key question is, were it sold as an outright freehold, would there have been interested parties?
We're not in the business of selling freeholds, and Village Hotels and John Lewis were perfectly happy to be able to acquire a 250-year lease. It's long enough. Again, you don't understand.
Right, thank you. Can we now go on to question 6, which will be from Councillor Corbett to Councillor Tate. Question 6.
Yes, thank you very much. Question 6 to Councillor Tate. Reference the medium-term financial forecast presented to Cabinet on the 25th of October and scrutiny on the 15th of November. Please could the Cabinet member explain why this Council is projecting, in its central case Appendix 2, 0 receipts from new homes bonuses from 2017-2018, despite the fact it's contrary to government policy. A negligible increase in receipts for business rates retained, despite the fact it's government policy that we're going to be able to have 100% business rate retention, and a collapse in revenue support grants. What does the Cabinet member know that we don't and the government knows?
Okay. There is no new homes bonus included in the mid-term financial forecast because the scheme is currently being reviewed by the government, and the outcome of the consultation was unknown when the strategy was prepared. In fact, it is due today, but even now was not announced at the time of writing this response. It has now. This is a prudent approach, as the government has clearly signalled through its consultation that is fundamentally reviewing the future of the grant. The consultation scope covers all facets of the grant, its longevity, its value calculation and its delivery, and it would therefore not currently be advisable to rely on any funding from this source for the medium term. And in fact, a preliminary review of today's document release indicates that we are right in the direction of travel and right in the assumptions, which will now be tested and will be brought into the Cabinet paper early in January. If the Council does receive new homes bonus in 2017-18, the budget strategy includes a recommendation that this is used as a short-term measure to support the revenue budget and allow time for new investment strategies to take effect. If no new homes bonus is received, the contingency position is to use the Stability and Resilience Reserve. The level of forecast business rates included in the mid-term financial forecast includes inflationary growth of approximately £55,000 per year. This is consistent with historical trends. Although there has been some growth due to Waitrose and John Lewis, this has been largely offset by conversions of office buildings to flats. The budget strategy includes significant additional spend to promote future growth, such as Basingview and the Leisure Park, but at this stage this growth is too uncertain or too far off to rely on for the ongoing funding of services. And as regards the revenue support grant, the government has already notified the Council of future grant levels. The Council therefore knows that the RSG will be cut by 49% next year to 731,000 and then to 305,000 in 2018-19. And from 1920 the Council will receive effectively no revenue support grant. Future government policy, we only know what has been announced, and there is significant uncertainty over how these proposals will be developed and implemented. And looking ahead, there are significant risks and uncertainties for the Council, such as business rates, needs assessment formula review, market volatility, welfare reform, new homes bonus, social care costs, and financing future austerity plans and devolution, etc. This makes it important for the Council to maintain adequate level of reserves, as proposed in the budget strategy, and to take a prudent approach in terms of the forecasting.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
The Chancellor, Philip Hammond, announced that the councils have increased their reserves since the beginning of this term by £9 billion. And I would posit that taking a view that the new homes bonus will be going down to zero is an economic nonsense. The government very specifically and explicitly is not going to remove all funding to all councils with immediate effect from 2017-2018. And I would suggest, therefore, that the medium-term finance roll-forward forecast is a little bit more accurate in its projections, instead of which it's suggesting there's going to be a 19% deficit because you've got zero in all of your columns. So we know that the government has said and there is going to be a question coming. We know that the government has said that we're going to have 100% business rate retention in the near future, and therefore how can you have zero business rate, how can you have zero new homes bonus and zero revenue grant? Who's going to be financing the council going forward?
Time's up. Thank you. Yes, time is up. Right, we've just got one more thing.
Did you get my note? Tony Jones?
Right, excuse me.
Yeah.
Right.
It wasn't.
Right, I just want to call on Councillor Tony Jones, who's got a point of explanation he wishes to make.
I was named as Councillor St Jones. What you're saying about Basingview I think is a good thing, but the point I was trying to get across, and I'm trying to get across to all councillors, is that when we've got controversial things, especially pink papers, if we have meetings beforehand so we can discuss them, we've got officers there, we can stop a lot of these blooming arguments and actually come to a conclusion. It doesn't look as if we're always being railroaded from this side, but it'd be something I would appreciate. Thank you.
Right.
We've noted those already.
Right. I've just looked. Item 24, actually, that's already been noted and changed. So I'd like now to close the meeting and invite those that wish to come in and join me in the Mayor's Parlour.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for the worshipful the Mayor.